We have finally made it to the end of our Six Sigma and Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt training course, which is based on the Council for Six Sigma Certification's body of knowledge. If you have not done so already, you should download a copy of the Council's Yellow Belt Training Manual, which covers the 4th to 11th chapters of their complete study guide. The prerequisite White Belt training course covers the first 3 chapters. The training manual can be downloaded from the course description section for this course. But before attempting the 60-question Yellow Belt certification exam, we should take some time to review what we have learned so far in this training course. Because you will only have 3 chances to pass the exam with a score of 70% or greater in order to receive your dual Six Sigma and Lean Six Sigma Yellow Belt certificates. This review will take about 3 hours to complete and has been split into 2 parts, after which you can take the timed exam whenever it is convenient for you. A business level SIPOC diagram is a very high level simplified SIPOC that shows how customers and vendors provide information and items. The final product goes to the individuals, businesses, and marketing professionals who place the order. Most of the time, a Six Sigma team won't deal with a business level SIPOC diagram. However, if the team includes members from outside the division or company, such as vendors or consultants assisting with an improvement, then starting with a high-level diagram can help those outside the business understand the overall goals of the company. Most SIPOC diagrams are for the department level or lower. A department level SIPOC diagram provides a mid-level look at the processes within a specific department. Process level SIPOC diagrams are the most common form used in a Six Sigma initiative, as they provide a more in-depth look at the process being improved. These can be manual or automated processes. Automated process SIPOC diagrams almost always send their outputs to another process. Because this is a process within a chain of automated processes, almost all of the components are machines, processes, and things. Without the conveyor machine, the people involved in the process would have to move items manually, which is a wasteful activity. And while a conveyor isn't 100% required for the process, it enables the process to move at a more efficient pace. A case could be made that a drill isn't required either. Screws can be installed manually, but it's certainly what enables the process to move at a speed required for mass production. With just a simple SIPOC diagram of a process, a Six Sigma team would already have some idea about where variations could be hiding, what drives efficiencies in the process, and how the process relates to the overall business. One of the most concise definitions of quality comes from the International Organizations for Standards, or ISO. ISO 9000 defines quality as the degree to which a set of inherent characteristics fulfills requirements. The same document defines requirements as expectations or needs that are implied, obligatory, or stated, and the ISO notes that requirements can be generated by different interest points. A Six Sigma team should be interested in requirements generated by all interest points, but often focuses most on those generated by the customer. Customer expectations, which are typically stated or implied, are a form of customer requirements. It's implied that a customer wants the product he or she ordered. Expectations of delivery speed might be stated in the form of feedback in a customer survey. Then, of course, there are compliance or regulatory rules, which are obligatory. For example, banks must protect credit card information. They are obligated by rules from government and the industry's payment card information data security standards. Similarly, healthcare organizations must protect the confidentiality and security of patient data. They are obligated to do so under the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA. And we cannot forget brand expectations, which come from in-house leadership. Brand expectations are typically stated, while not obligatory in the sense of being backed by regulation. Companies for which high quality, a specific voice, or other unique factor is a component of branding might treat brand expectations as obligatory. Coca-Cola, for example, has a brand that is recognizable around the globe, while components of that brand, such as the design of logos or soda cans, aren't mandated by regulations and might not be required by customs. Coca-Cola itself holds these components as important and puts resources and efforts into them because it values its brand. Critical to quality characteristics, or CTQs, are factors or parameters that are major drivers of quality within an organization or process. Usually, critical to quality characteristics are key characteristics that can be measured, where the performance of said metrics provides information about whether or not the customer is going to be satisfied. Critical to quality characteristics are closely related to CTCs or critical to customer characteristics, but they are not the same thing. Something can be critical to quality, even critical to how a customer ultimately feels about a service or product, without being critical to the customer directly. CTQs are internal concerns, but they drive CTCs. When a customer purchases a pair of pants, he or she is usually concerned with how the pant fits and looks. It's hard to create a measurement for whether pants are comfortable, but a manufacturer can take customer feedback on various types of pants and learn that certain fabric with certain cuts are more comfortable for the target audience. The manufacturer can also determine appropriate measurements for each size. A chocolate company conducts a survey to find out why sales of its newest product haven't performed as expected. The feedback suggests that chocolate is too sweet. The taste and sweetness of the chocolate is a critical to customer characteristic. The company might tweak its formula, reducing the amount of sugar that goes into the chocolate. The recipe and the amount of sugar is a critical to quality factor in this case. But what if the customer feedback indicated that health conscious consumers simply didn't want to buy a chocolate bar with so much sugar in it? Then the amount of sugar in the recipe becomes both a critical to quality factor and a critical to customer factor. It is critical to the quality of the taste of the bar, but customers might also look at the nutritional information on the bar and make purchasing decisions based on the amount of sugar in the chocolate. In a process improvement environment, CTQs are critical to the narrowing work scope and understanding how to enact change. Often, critical to quality characteristics are the factors, characteristics, or outputs that drive 80% of customer satisfaction. Six Sigma teams must always be aware that quality comes at a cost. When talking about quality costs, many organizations consider what is known as the cost of poor quality, or COPQ. The cost of poor quality is defined as the cost or expenses associated with defects created by a process. Quality actually has a broader cost. Avoiding poor quality comes at an expense as well. The cost of quality, or COQ, covers the expenses associated with maintaining good quality throughout an organization or process. Sometimes this is referred to as the cost of good quality. In some ways, the cost of poor quality is easier to measure than the cost associated with the overall quality. The cost of poor quality is usually broken into two major categories: costs associated with external failures and costs associated with internal failures. External and internal failures are often referred to as the cost of nonconformity. They are the expenses that occur when outputs do not conform to critical to quality requirements. External failures usually occur after products or services have been delivered, which means that they are directly associated with customer dissatisfaction. Internal failures occur when products, services, or processes don't conform to the requirements set by the company, and the product or service is provided to the customer in an unsatisfactory fashion. Internal failures are usually handled by scrapping the work, redoing the work, or repairing the work. Obviously, such rework results in added material and labor costs, but it also results in losses associated with delays, shortages of parts or inventory, and a lack of flexibility or the ability to adapt. For example, if a process has such poor quality that 50% of the items produced by it require rework, then the process might be producing 40% less on a daily basis than it could be. That means that the process can serve fewer customers, generate less output, and contribute less overall to the company's profit. Understanding the cost of poor quality is critical to Six Sigma organizations because it lets leaders understand how financial needs are related to the need for quality improvements. The higher the cost of poor quality, the more likely an organization will work towards improvement. Teams can bring abundant knowledge of Six Sigma to the table, but if organizations don't choose the right projects, improvements won't drive effective changes for the benefit of the bottom line and/or customer satisfaction. Since Six Sigma teams work best when it is implemented as a company-wide culture, project selection should work as an enterprise-wide function. Projects should be clearly linked to business priorities as reflected by the strategic and annual operating plans. It is also important to include projects addressing critical problems that must be resolved in order for an organization to be successful in the next year. A project should represent a breakthrough in terms of major improvements in both process performance and significant bottom line results. The project should be doable in 4 to 6 months. It is critical that the projects be completed in this time frame in order to keep the organization and resources focused on the project. Organizations typically lose interest in projects that run longer than 6 months. There should be clear quantitative measures of success. The importance of the project to the organization should be clear, and the project should have the full support and approval of management. People are more likely to support a project that they can see as clearly important to the organization. Organizations need to develop their own specific project selection criteria. Many organizations struggle with how to find high impact projects. Project ideas can come from any source, such as process assessments, customer and employee surveys and suggestions, benchmarking studies, extensions of existing projects, and so on. You should avoid or redefine projects that have fuzzy objectives, poor metrics, no tie to financials, too broad in scope, no connection to strategic or annual plans, solutions have already been identified, or where there are too many objectives. For the project to be successful, the objectives need to be very clear. Such clarity is usually reflected in the process performance metrics and goals associated with the project. The process metrics should be clearly defined and have baseline and entitlement value identified. A critical part of Six Sigma success for organizations is knowing when teams reach maximum project load. Even when organizations hire employees dedicated to process improvement, they can only sustain a certain number of improvement projects without substantially reducing the positive outcomes of those projects. While project work, including data gathering and analysis, might be handled by employees committed 100% to improvement projects, teams usually have to engage with and pull resources from regular staff members. An organization that juggles too many projects puts daily output at risk. In seeking to improve processes, a company that selects too many projects at one time could actually negatively impact quality. No formula exists for how many projects a company should run at a given time, but a few well-designed projects are more likely to make a greater impact than many poorly designed, overlapping, or underfunded projects. Organizations should only launch projects they can fund, support with resources, and manage. Six Sigma projects take monetary resources, which means organizations must prioritize based on financial criteria. They require work from employees at all levels. Companies shouldn't launch 3 projects at one time that draw heavily on IT resources, or attempt multiple simultaneous projects that need input from the Director of Compliance on a regular basis. Relying too heavily on resources for multiple projects can burn employees out, decrease morale, impact quality, and impede work that is necessary to keep the business running from day to day. Six Sigma teams are usually run by black belts, sometimes along with certified project managers. Since black belts are supported by green belts, who handle much of the data and analysis work, a single black belt can usually manage more than one project at a time if needed. This is especially true for experienced black belts who are not responsible for any type of daily operation. Even so, organizations with limited Six Sigma experts on staff can't launch dozens of projects without putting a strain on those resources. When companies are working to apply Six Sigma culture to the entire enterprise, executive leaders and other decision makers should work directly with Six Sigma experts in order to identify improvement opportunities and to launch projects. Doing so lets leaders align project selection with organizational goals, ensuring projects are organized in a way that matches resources and keep a bird's eye view on improvement endeavors. Organizations can apply a 5-step procedure for identifying viable Six Sigma improvement projects. These steps are the database review of current state of the organization, brainstorm and describe potential projects, apply some basic criteria to shorten the list, create unique business criteria, and use business criteria to prioritize project lists. Organizations can begin with a high level look at internal and external sources of information about performance. Internal information might include complaints or issues raised by employees, existing performance metrics or reports, financial reports, and quality reports. External sources include all of the voice of the customer tools. Answers to the questions in step 1 become a brainstorming list for potential projects. Once a list of possible projects is created, teams can apply some very basic criteria to remove projects that are inappropriate, would not work with Six Sigma methodology, are not properly scoped, or have little likely return on investment. After removing project ideas that don't fit Six Sigma methodology, teams should create and apply business criteria to further filter the list. Business criteria usually come in the form of expenses, monetary gains, impacts on customer satisfaction, and urgency. Using the business criteria, teams should prioritize projects and select projects from the top of the prioritized list for immediate work. One of the best ways to prioritize projects is to create a selection matrix with defined criteria and a numerical ranking system. Teams can choose to create their own criteria for a project selection matrix, or they can use a 15-point viability model as defined previously. One benefit of the project viability model is that it provides some weighting, letting teams make some criteria more important than others. Six Sigma is typically managed on 2 levels within an organization. First, the culture of Six Sigma must be managed at an enterprise-wide level, usually by a group or council of senior managers, such as executives, with the guidance of a master black belt or black belt. Ultimately, this group sets the tone for Six Sigma within an organization, provides final approval on projects, and holds others accountable for metrics, performance, and success. While many of these individuals might also work as sponsors or champions on projects, as a group, they don't tend to get involved in the day-to-day project details. Some roles of a high-level Six Sigma leadership group include the creation of rationale for the use of Six Sigma within the organization and supporting process improvements as a cultural goal. The setting of clear objectives for Six Sigma initiatives to ensure that a project goal is aligned with a business goal, the holding of Six Sigma teams and organization accountable for improvements in performance, the demanding and reviewing of measurements of results, the communication of wins and losses to the team in an honest manner, the rewarding of teams and individuals for Six Sigma success, as well as the advocacy for resources and funding necessary for improvement projects. Six Sigma must also be managed at the team level. You can't simply have a pre-made team ready to begin work on every project that comes up. Six Sigma teams must be uniquely tailored to the goals and processes at hand. The same Six Sigma experts, black belt leaders, data analysts, or project managers might work across multiple projects, but individual subject matter experts and team members only bring high value to the team if they are familiar with the process or have some related education, knowledge, or skill to offer. Not all team members will serve consistently throughout the entire life of a project either. This is often why companies send existing employees for Six Sigma training rather than hire Six Sigma experts. Executive leadership groups working with Six Sigma leaders and experts usually put teams together. Any process improvement team should have, at a minimum, a Six Sigma leader, a process owner, an expert on the process, and someone to manage budgeting and accounting. Some of those roles might be handled by the same person. The process owner might also be the process expert. Depending on the expectations of needs, the team might also need to include technical resources such as a programmer or IT lead, as well as individuals from human resources, compliance, legal, or other ancillary departments. When putting teams together, organizations should remember that three basic team member types exist with relation to a Six Sigma project. First, there are the regular team members. These individuals participate in all activities of the team and attend all or most all of the team's meetings. Regular team meetings include project leaders, process owners, and experts, and identified subject matter experts who the team or executives feel would be critical components to their group. Most Six Sigma process improvement teams are relatively small. 5 regular team members is considered a good number on average. Adding too many regular team members can, of course, create communication problems, make it difficult to manage brainstorming sessions, and cause burnout. When all of the company's Six Sigma teams are large, there's a good chance that team members are serving on multiple projects at the same time. Scheduling and maintaining that schedule is an integral part of the Six Sigma project process. Organizational leaders need to understand how long a project will take and when results can be expected, and when team resources will be freed up for other endeavors. Without this information, leadership cannot plan for ongoing improvement, and employees can feel trapped in a project that seems to stretch on forever. Six Sigma projects usually follow a specific series of phases. We've already introduced the concept of the DMAIC method. DMAIC breaks up a project into 5 distinct phases: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Experienced Six Sigma experts with some data and information about a project and process can usually provide a very basic and raw estimate of time by assigning a certain number of weeks to each phase. It's also worth noting that most of the phases are likely to overlap. The critical path method is a more detailed way of defining timelines for various elements of a project, but it does require more information and input from a project team. This means you probably won't be able to provide a detailed timeline until the project is underway. A critical path diagram could be one of the activities the team undertakes as part of the define phase. Once a timeline is established, set up milestone meetings and dates to help keep the team on track and notify the sponsor or champion of the progress. In a DMAC project, milestones are usually set at the end of each phase. However, teams can set custom milestones, and sponsors might require specific milestones if they are approving large resources or funding requests for a project. You can also set up milestones within a team environment to manage goals and tasks. These milestones can be kept within the team, though. The milestone dates are when the team or the black belt will meet with the sponsor to present the findings or results from each phase of the project. Each date gives the team something to work towards. By breaking each phase and each larger task into smaller parts, it's easier for the team to stay on track and complete the work. Smaller tasks seems more manageable, so they are more likely to be accomplished than larger tasks. Teams, and especially team leaders, must always be concerned with project budgets. While success is rated by end customer in terms of performance, quality, and satisfaction, Six Sigma teams also answer to corporate leadership. For leaders, success is also measured in terms of time and budget. A strong timeline and good milestones help you meet timeline requirements, and an understanding of financial drivers, strong communication, and financial oversight help you keep a project within budget. One of the challenges when dealing with budgets in a Six Sigma project is that all team members are not always completely aware of financial drivers. In some cases, financial information might even be restricted. Employers don't generally want specific data about employee paid made public to various team members. For example, some information and analysis might need to be performed solely by a project leading black belt in such cases, especially if the data is critical or sensitive. Outside of concerns with sensitive data, process improvement projects work best when all team members are made aware of as many of the drivers and data as possible. When teams know how much funding a champion is willing to seek on their behalf, they can make realistic decisions about how to improve a process. Sometimes, the solution that is most likely to generate the most improvement isn't viable because of budget. Budget concerns vary by organization. In some organizations, leaders are most concerned with specific expenditures by a team, including expenses on new equipment, hiring new personnel, or purchasing new products or software. But some organizations take a more granular approach to project budgets, considering the expenses of hours spent by the team on the project as well as the expenses associated with training and implementing a solution outside of the team environment. Six Sigma team leaders must ensure that they understand how leaders and organizations manage project budgets. Working for the first time with an organization or sponsor means having honest and thorough conversations about how budgets are calculated and how much sponsors are willing to work for increases in a budget. One of the things that sets Six Sigma apart from other quality improvement and management methodologies is a structured approach to every project. Projects that are meant to improve an existing process follow a roadmap for success known as the DMAIC process. DMAIC is broken into 5 distinct phases: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. The main activities of a DMAIC project include identifying the critical inputs or causes, the X's, that are creating the problem, the Y, verifying those causes, brainstorming and selecting solutions, implementing solutions, and creating control plan to ensure the improved state is maintained. The DMAIC methodology is designed to be fairly inclusive. The vast majority of teams who are seeking to improve a project will be able to fit their daily activities into the DMAIC steps because those steps are designed to allow some flexibility. Sometimes, though, teams realize that fixing or improving a process isn't the right way to achieve sustained improvement for the organization. Instead, a process might need to be completely replaced or redesigned to meet goals for the customer satisfaction or organizational improvement. In such cases, teams can employ the DMADV method. DMADV stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Design, and Verify. The principles governing the method are very similar to those governing DMAIC, but the last 2 phases are geared towards rolling out and testing a completely new process. Most teams go into the project knowing whether they are employing DMAIC or DMADV, but some DMAIC projects can become DMADV projects, usually during the define, measure, or analyze stages. This is when teams realize that they need a complete new process replacement. Switching to the new methodology during the middle of the project might require some shuffling of resources and could impact project schedules, which means keeping champions and sponsors informed of team progress and decision is imperative. It's worth noting that some organizations don't formally use the DMADV approach for any project, in part because they find it easier to stick with the nomenclature of a single methodology. The major differences between DMAIC and DMADV are the goals the team sets and the outcome of the completed project. In some ways, a DMADV project might feel like it has a more tangible outcome, but in reality, both methods are seeking to deliver better quality, better efficiency, more production, more profits, higher customer satisfaction, or some combination of these things. So let's look at some quick definitions of each phase as they relate to the DMAIC versus DMADV. During a DMAIC project, the define phase is concerned with identifying the problem, defining requirements for the project, and setting goals for success. In a DMADV project, the define phase is slightly more rigid because teams also have to identify a problem and begin defining requirements, but requirements must be made with a change management environment. The DMAIC measure phase is when teams use data to validate their assumptions about the process and the problem. Teams working through a DMADV approach might do some of the same things during the measure phase, but activities are typically more targeted as teams will likely collect data and measurements that help them define performance requirements for the new process. During the analyze phase of the DMAIC project, teams develop hypotheses about causal relationships between inputs and outputs and between X's and Y's. They narrow causation down to the vital few. A team using the DMADV might also identify causes and effects relationships, but they are usually more concerned with identifying best practices and benchmarks by which to measure and design new processes. Six Sigma teams start developing the ideas that began in the analyze phase during the improve phase of a project. They use statistical and real-world observation to test hypotheses and solutions. The fourth phase is where DMADV projects begin to diverge substantially from DMAIC projects. The team actually works to design a new process. For DMAIC and DMADV teams, the control or verify phase is where loose ends are tied and the project is transitioned to a daily work environment. During the define phase of a Six Sigma process improvement project, teams create what is known as a project charter and a basic plan for work. A charter is a synopsis of the project. It provides some common information and a summary of what the team hopes to accomplish. The charter usually features a list of team members, names of those responsible for outcomes, a problem statement, a goal, and some basic definitions of scope and metrics for success. Some charters also include a rough timeline estimate for the project. Also, during the define phase, teams create or list measurable customer requirements and create high-level documents about the process. Often, teams will start with a SIPOC diagram to help them to begin to understand a process. Teams should also identify stakeholders during the define phase. Stakeholders are individuals both within and without an organization who have some level of influence on the success of an improvement project. By understanding who stakeholders are, teams can remain in contact with various persons throughout the project, communicating with those stakeholders as needed to ensure future viability of any improvement that is created. One way to identify stakeholders is through a stakeholders analysis. One of the biggest challenges Six Sigma teams face when in the define phase of a project is generating positive, targeted momentum that sets the foundation for the rest of the project. As a Six Sigma team leader, you can increase chances of success by keeping the team focused as much as possible during the define phase. Begin by explaining the Six Sigma process and the purpose of the project for any ancillary team members who may not be familiar with Six Sigma and DMAIC. Next, work as a team to create ground rules for how the project will run, including how meetings are organized and managed, how information will be communicated, and what each team member might be responsible for during the project. Create a charter and a project plan so the team has something to focus on, and if possible, have the champion or project sponsor spend time with the team. Once a team has a good grasp of what the process does and how it works, what the problem is, and what the goals for the project are, the team moves from the define to measure phase. Usually the transition between phases is marked by a tollgate review, wherein the team presents its defined work to a champion or Six Sigma leadership board. The champion or board provides feedback and makes the decisions about whether the team is ready to move on to the measure phase. During the measure phase, the team is concerned with creating a baseline metric for the process and refining the problem statements and other outputs of the defined phase. Creating a baseline metric lets teams understand how a process should be measured and how the process is really performing before improvements begin. It also provides a comparison point so teams can show how much improvement they have brought to a project at the end of the DMAIC method. One of the biggest challenges, especially for teams and team members who are new to Six Sigma, can be deciding what to measure. Many times, inexperienced teams end up spending time collecting data that doesn't provide answers or cannot be used for the process. Because the measure phase starts with some educated guesswork and trial and error, teams and Six Sigma leaders have to keep a close eye on progress and redirect work when measurements are not creating the answers or production required. A successful measure phase requires strong observational skills and understanding of the reasons behind the measure, knowledge of data types such as discrete and continuous, tools for measurement assessment, and a strong background in statistical analysis. The measure phase is often the most challenging phase for Six Sigma team leader, especially when working with teams that are inexperienced in the methodology. When teams start to really dig deep into a process and begin to measure things, they often get a true idea about how challenging the problem really is. They might also have a difficult time understanding how and when to measure things, and collecting data that hasn't been collected before can be very time consuming and tedious. Once measurements are collected, or in the process of being collected, Six Sigma teams usually move on to the analyze phase. Again, a tollgate review is often conducted between phases, but the lines between measure and analyze are often blurrier than the lines between define and measure. In some cases, a team has to measure, analyze, and then measure some more, particularly if metrics aren't already in place for a process. Analyze phases are when teams perform detective work on the process, using the clues gathered during the define and measure phases, along with information provided by the sponsor, process owner, and subject matter experts. Teams attempt to identify root causes for a problem. They also use statistical analysis and other tools to verify causes before turning to the work of identifying possible solutions. During the analyze phase, teams use a variety of tools. Tools common in the analyze phase include Pareto charts, run charts, histograms, cause and effects diagrams, scatter diagrams, process maps, and value analysis. As teams work through the analyze phase, they also start preparing for the improve phase. During analyze, teams might begin working on possible solutions and selecting solutions, developing improvement plans, and preparing some basic documentation about improvement work. Whether a team begins this work during the analyze phase often depends on the individual project and the manner in which the Six Sigma team leader would like to proceed. The Six Sigma team leader should ensure that teams are not taking on too much of the project at one time and that working on early improvement work doesn't reduce the efficacy of the work done for the analyze phase. Teams in the analyze phase might continue to suffer from storming if teams didn't storm during the define or measure phases. They might begin to do so in analyze. Another common challenge for Six Sigma team leaders is introducing and explaining statistical concepts during the analyze phase. When other team members or even the champion of the process are not familiar with statistical analysis, presenting analysis with statistical verbiage is a mistake. During the improve phase of a project, a Six Sigma team selects a final solution and begins to put it in place. Sometimes, teams will select more than one solution, especially if a few smaller solutions are highly related and work together for an overall solution. It can be hard to determine which solution actually improves a process. However, so it is usually a best practice to implement one change at a time and verify that change before moving on to something else. Teams might also come up with many possible solutions, all of which would provide some improvement for the process. They should use a solutions selection matrix or other Six Sigma tool to evaluate solutions. choosing only the few best solutions. It is worth noting again that the best solution is not always the solution that provides the most improvement. Solutions that are so expensive or disruptive that they cause a disadvantage that outweighs any benefits should never be selected by project teams. During Improve, Six Sigma teams must continue to keep the project definitions in mind. The solution must address a root cause verified in the analyze phase. The root cause must be directly related to the problem stated during the define phase. After selecting solutions, teams must test them using statistical tools and real-world sampling to ensure effectiveness before deploying solutions to a live work environment. Possibly, the most common problem that plagues Six Sigma teams during the improve phase is project fatigue. By the time teams have come to improve, they have been working on a project for weeks or even months. For many team members, the project work is on top of their regular work. Fatigue or frustration might push team members to select an improvement solution just to have the project completed. Six Sigma team leaders have to work to keep teams motivated on quality and improvement. The best way for a Six Sigma team leader to create strength as the team nears project completion is to build a good foundation for Six Sigma in the earlier phases. Teams that understand the DMAIC process and have at least a basic understanding of Six Sigma and statistical analysis by the improve phase are more likely to stick with planning, analysis, and DMAIC. Control is the final phase for the Six Sigma teams employing the DMAIC process. During the control phase, teams usually handle four tasks: creating the foundation for process discipline, finalizing documents regarding the improvement, establishing ongoing metrics to evaluate the process, and building a process management plan that lets the team transition the improvement to the process owner. Tools used by a team during the control phase include documentation checklists, control charts, response plans, process maps, and process dashboards. The control phase is often easy for a team because the work of the team has already reached a crescendo. In a well-run DMAIC process, the control phase is a time of wrapping up loose ends and arriving at the end of the project. At the same time, teams might find it challenging to let go of a process they have put so much time and effort into. By the time teams reach the control phase, they might have been working with the process for months. If a Six Sigma team leader has done his or her job, the team has taken ownership of the process and feels personally tied to the quality and output, making it harder for them to turn the work over to other teams or employees. Six Sigma team leaders can help team members transition a project by preparing them in advance for this phase. You might also find ways to incorporate team members into meetings or presentations where project results are being shared. Six Sigma leaders should always host a meeting to wrap up the project. The meeting should be somewhat celebratory in nature, if budget, time, and policy allows. Six Sigma leaders might consider having lunch or snacks at the meeting. Take time to recognize each team member's contribution and ask team members to identify something they learn that can be applied to their own work. This helps team members see that Six Sigma is an ongoing culture within an organization, and the end of a particular project doesn't equate to the end of each person's involvement in continuous improvement. Recognition is extremely important when ending a Six Sigma project. Team members might have put in extra hours to work on the project while maintaining their own responsibilities. Design is the fourth phase of the DMADV process. It replaces the improve phase of DMAIC. DMADV is one approach for what we call Design for Six Sigma or DFSS. Another approach is called DMADOV, which stands for Define, Measure, Analyze, Design, Optimize, and Validate. Teams using the DMADV approach usually combine the activities from Design and Optimize, and we'll briefly introduce those activities in this section. The design phase of DMADV is when teams create a new process or develop a new product. A Six Sigma team would have previously done all the work to lay the foundation for the development during the define, measure, and analyze phases. which means most of the design phase is taken up with the actual work involved in creating the process or project. Using the plans, instructions, or maps created in earlier phases, the team either creates a product themselves or works with vendors, manufacturers, or other employees to create the product. For example, if the DMADV project involved the creation of a new app for customers or employees, the team might work with staff in programming and technical departments. They might also work with a vendor who will be supplying the app or software in question. In such a case, a representative from the vendor should have been a part of the team throughout all phases. During design, a team will also test the product, process, or service. Testing can be done in a testing environment, in limited production environments, or via beta testing. Usually, the team rolls out the new process or product to a limited number of internal or external customers. Those customers provide feedback, and the team uses the feedback to troubleshoot the new process or product if needed. Seeking feedback and troubleshooting the new process to create the best possible solution is where the optimize in DMADOV comes in. In a process redesign project, all phases are essential, but design is often seen as the most critical. Teams that falter in the design phase can waste the work that was put into the other phases, and it's easy for teams to fall prey to project fatigue just as work requirements pick up for everyone involved. The verify phase of a DMADV or DMADOV project is very similar to the control phase of a DMAIC project. The new process, product, or service is transitioned out of the project mode and handed off to the process owners or employees who work daily with the process or product in question. Control plans, including control charts, might be put in place by the team to track ongoing results. And almost all of the tools used in DMAIC control phase are relevant to verify. One of the main differences between verify and control is that DMADV teams might take time to complete further critical to quality analysis at the end of the project so that they can identify new critical to quality factors. This is done because the process or product is different than it was when the team first started working. While the team should have made an educated guess about the critical to quality factors for the new product and used those CTQs in planning and designing, they could not predict 100% how the customer might react to the new product or process. A new process might have a capability the old one did not. Having that capability, the customer might decide it is the most important factor in quality about the process or product. At the end of the verify phase, a team delivers a final product or process that meets the needs first identified in the define phase. The process or product should be free of known problems and defects wherever possible, and teams should have provided a way to manage and control the process through statistical control charts, lean templates, and policies. One of the major differences between DMAIC and DMADV is the possible timeline. While some DMADV projects might only take a few months, many process or product designs can take years. Because of this, the concluding challenges for a DMADV team are similar to those in a DMAIC environment, but they might be heightened by the length of time the team has spent on the project. Six Sigma team leaders should ensure that a DMADV project closes on a positive note by validating all team members and ensuring process owners have all the tools that they need to accept the new process without disrupting work. You should now have a basic understanding of how a Six Sigma team approaches a problem or process improvement. Whether improving an existing process or creating a new process or product, teams work through phased approaches. The phases of the DMAIC and DMADV process provide control and organization for a project, help keep everyone on task, and let teams break up what can seem like an enormous task into chunks that are tolerable. As the old adage says, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. Similarly, the phased approach of Six Sigma breaks up the elephant so teams can work on it one small bite at a time.